Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call, first of all, guys, if you could all mute your mics, please. Keep them muted. I'm going to call the open council meeting to order and recess it until after the open general purposes committee meeting. So that, with that, I'm going to call the General Purposes Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Someone wave their hand. Okay.
And
Okay, that's moved and seconded. Remember to mute your mics, guys. Any comments, questions? Anybody opposed? I'll take it that is carried then. Harold, going to your second, the first item of business on the list. You and I spoke about this, and I think what we said is that it's a little odd the way the thing is set out on the agenda, because it basically has the meat of the motion as number one, then has all of Port Moody's as number two. So, but I think all we need is number one, requesting government to develop and enact a coastal strategy, et cetera, and the final paragraph of number two, and that the City of Richmond write a letter of support to, and we'll add in UBCM, BC Minister of the Environment, et cetera, as in that paragraph. Is that your intention, Harold?
That's exactly what I want to do. So moved.
Okay, is it seconded? Someone just wave your hand. Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Go ahead, Harold.
Yeah, I've outlined the history of the Coastal Zone Act that we're talking about, and it all began in Richmond in the 60s. Before I was even on council, we had people trying to get some sense out of what was happening on the Fraser River, and as I've outlined there, it went through a number of societies and environmental groups. And on their behalf, I made a presentation to when I was MLA, to develop a Coastal Zone Act. Unfortunately, the government changed; it never happened. And so all the groups, including the City of Richmond, got together and at a major conference and came up with some ideas, and which ended up with the creation of TRIM. What's interesting is that over those years, we've seen some major changes in the wrong direction. When I was first elected to Richmond Council, and we were thinking of coastal zone protection, Richmond was able to protect the coastal zone. The federal government didn't have any rules that overruled the city, and so Richmond was successfully told IOCO that they couldn't put in an oil tanker port at Gary Point. And that right over the years was taken away from us, and now the port has the right to tell us whatever they want to do. But initially, the City of Richmond had many more rights than we have today. So I think it's really important that some authority have some rights to investigate the estuary and the rest of the coastline, to be able to counter what I see as a problem from the port in terms of their jet fuel terminal and all the developments they're doing on the Fraser that are basically unchecked because they were given the rights to check themselves. So I think that's the rest of it's in what I've written, but we need some of our rights back.
All right, thanks, Harold. Now listen, my mouse is giving me a lot of problems this afternoon, so I can see all of you. Just wave at me if you want to speak. So far I've got Bill and Carol and Michael and Kelly, okay? And
I'll
Jack.
be supporting this, Your Worship. I think I agree totally with Harold. Just a couple things in the question of Harold. I believe we need to be requesting this, regardless of what any other municipality does. And we need to be forwarding it to the UBCM and having their support on it. But I guess my question is it encompassing enough, and does it go far enough? Is it inclusive of what we really want? I think this is the one shot we've got to put it forward. So I guess I'd ask Harold, are you comfortable with the preamble in one to make sure it's all inclusive?
Well, just a minute. We're not including the preamble. It's just simply the recommendation and writing letters, and then Harold's report fleshes it out.
Okay, but we are requesting, are we not? The city
Yes.
is going to request.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
In the last paragraph, you said, Your Worship, we write a letter of support. We should support and request those individuals to take action on it, as opposed to just support. I don't like the letter of support. It's great, but we want them to do something. Okay, and I think that's what we can act at. We're providing information to them, but we also want them to follow up with whoever is going to be doing this.
Okay, well, that's a valid point, Harold. In that letter, in the number 2, where we ask for letters, a letter be written, how about if it's write a letter of support and requesting action to the UBCM, BC minister, et cetera. Is that okay?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay,
Right.
I would appreciate that. Harold, I support you on it. I just didn't think it went far enough on it because, as you well know, you can get buried and nothing will happen. So
All right.
we will do follow-up. Thank you.
All right, Carol. I've got Carol, Michael, Kelly, Jack.
Thank you very much for bringing this forward, Harold. This is fantastic. I have been long concerned about the accumulative effect of all these little projects that are not little, big projects that are coming along the Fraser River. And when I look at the West Coast Environmental Law Report, I think they stated that Washington State is very concerned. This is on GP 24 under Washington. It says the Shoreline Management Act was created to prevent the inherent harm in an uncoordinated and piecemeal development of the state's shorelines. Are we dealing with this in the motion as it sits, or do we need to add something like that? Like it is the uncoordinated piecemeal development of the shoreline that is causing the problems, and we can never go back. So what are your thoughts about that?
You okay with that, Harold?
Yeah, that's the intent. Basically, when we had Fremp made decisions like that, and that's the problem. A Coastal Zone Act would do the same. A Coastal Zone Act is the strongest thing we can do. Going back to some Fremp is the next best thing. And if we don't get a Coastal Zone Act, we should be looking at another Fremp.
So we can add then that Shoreline Management Act as per what they've done in Washington as an example of what we're looking for, how we're trying to move forward.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a couple questions of staff on this one. So I'm definitely in support of the coastal strategy and read up on it from a number of organizations. One being the Western Environmental. I'm going to get the name right. West Coast Environmental Law. That's where I'm going to be quoting a few things from. And also in the city's document, the Richmond's Ecological Network Mapping or Management Strategy, there's a page there on foreshore jurisdictions, and the city does say it's a jurisdictionally complex. And what I'm first want to question here is, I think it's all great that we get the government behind it because many of these things fall under their management. But there's a few things that the West Coast Environmental Law says are city related, and I just want to ask about a few things. So first off, the Grower lands that we purchased, would that fall to the province to regulate because it's foreshore, it's within the land and the sea, or is that ours because we were part of purchasing it? And I have some follow-up questions.
Who can comment on that, or Harold can comment?
Which land are you talking about?
The Grower lands that the city purchased in 2012 with Ducks Unlimited.
Okay, we own the Grower lands now, so that's us. But when we acquired that, we had money from Ducks Unlimited, and they required us to move all the logs, which is pretty stupid. But anyway, we had to do it. But now the logs will pile up, and we'll have normal activities on the marsh again.
So, but when I read through the city's document here, it typically says that anything outside our dike is provincial jurisdiction. But now I'm confused about that land because the city purchased it and we were involved with the movement of those logs and stuff. So is that our jurisdiction then? Is that not the foreshore? Is that considered land?
It's foreshore, but we own it.
Okay.
All right.
I'll follow up on that then. I think it was a few months ago, the Port of Vancouver was asking us to endorse their plan to replace a mudflat with a marsh habitat. And the city staff had mentioned at the time that that area and all along the western Sturgeon Banks, there's a plan in the works. I'm not sure I can see it as a past referral, but does staff have a plan that's going to be revealed soon on what future actions can be that are within the city's jurisdiction? Or
does anybody on staff have an answer for that? Because my suggestion is, unless we have an answer for it, speak to staff, and you can always bring it up when this comes to council.
For sure. Yeah. Just if staff has.
Does staff have a quick answer for that?
Your Worship, John Irving here. Yeah, just very quickly to yourself, or through yourself to Michael Wolfe, Councillor Wolfe. We are watching the port strategy on that, but I would say it's the port's moves are an example of the chronic issue that we're facing with the current regulatory regime, both federally and provincially, and the EA review process, where the regulatory assessments, largely the environmental approval assessments, are done on a one-off basis for various projects. And the previous council approved positions that were taken with projects like the jet fuel, fundamentally recognized this flaw. And we've been pushing for some time to ensure that there is a comprehensive strategy, which has been lacking. So yes, there is movement in that regard, but movement on that and other projects are largely driven by the proponents. And that's certainly something we'd like to get away from.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Green.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm definitely in support of this. It seems like we're getting chipped away one piece at a time, and I hate to think what's going to happen when there's no more pieces left. Richmond's been particularly caught in the middle with the jet fuel and then the Tilbury expansion right across the river from the big jet fuel tanks. So very much hope that this comes to fruition before much more damage can happen to the Fraser Estuary. Thanks.
Councillor Howe.
Yes, I am supportive of the motion, but I want to ask a question either to staff or to Councillor Steeves. It was mentioned that the Fraser River Estuary Management Program was established and then disbanded. So why was it being disbanded recently?
Harold, do you want to answer that?
I couldn't hear. Speak a little louder.
Okay. My question was, why was the Fraser River Estuary Management Program being disbanded?
Still didn't hear you. You're speaking down.
Why was FREMP disbanded? I think the answer is because they decided to.
The federal government decided to do it because they wanted to expand the port, as near as I can tell.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. So we'll call the question then on the motion. You know what it is? Oh, Linda? Your mute's on, Linda. Linda, your mute's on. Yeah, go ahead now.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I know we've had many discussions about how we were disappointed when FREMP was disbanded and some of the issues that have come out of that. But, I have a question through you, Your Worship, to staff. We're known as a leader in our environmental sustainability work, and especially in and around diking. So at a high level, when you look at something like this, do you think there's any risk of, downloading to local governments? Like if you just look at flood protection, we know that we're far ahead than some of the other cities along the Fraser River. So, I'm just thinking that we wouldn't want anything to constrain the work that we're doing. So just at a high level, is there any risk of something like this?
Through your worship to Councillor McPhail. Yes, I think, with the prior federal government, the PC government's disbandment of REMP, and certainly actions at the provincial government level over the last 20 years, part of the fundamental problem is just a lack of resources that both those levels of government have put into environmental protection and assessment. And we see this chronically now, just getting very simple capital projects approved and those approval processes being delayed. It's largely because there just simply aren't the resources or the staff numbers at the provincial and federal levels that they used to be. They haven't properly resourced their regulations. And so ultimately, they're kind of expecting municipal governments to fill the gap without the actual regulatory powers, which is a very challenging scenario.
All right, thank you.
Okay. With that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that is carried. So that brings us to Councillor Au's motion, which is 1A. Councillor Au, Jack, do you want to introduce that?
Yes, I'm asking support for these three motions. And in essence, the motion is asking for implementation of some of the recommendations that we make in our Cultural Harmony Action Plan. So it's not something that is new to us, but it's already in the plan. And I'm asking for staff to come up with implementation. Now, there are three motions. The first one is about implementation of the review on recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So we adopted that recommendation, and I'm asking staff to look into the steps to implement. And in particular, I want to raise the restoration of the First Nations bunkhouse. I have provided supplementary background information today, saying that with the bunkhouse restore, it will make the cultural mosaic of the heritage district enrichment more complete. We already have the Chinese and Japanese structures, facilities being restored, but this one is an addition. And I'm also thinking that in terms of the bigger environment right now, with the what is happening in the world, in Canada, regarding racial tension, I think this is the right time for us to move forward with the recommendation that we made in our action plan. I've also provided further information to support the motions, saying that after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report was being released in 2015, it's been 5 years. And also both the FCM and UPSM have called upon local governments to move forward. And I also want to bring to your attention a report being supplied by Canadian Racial Relations Foundation, which is quite recent. And it talks about racial discrimination in Canada. And in particular, they point to two groups. The First Nations and the Black Canadians are the two groups that are mostly being discriminated against. So I think Richmond adopted the Cultural Harmony Plan. We also state that we are going to fight against racism. So I think it's time for us to include to highlight more about the First Nations people and also the Black Canadians. So this is the essence of my motions.
All right, now just before you make your motion, in the first paragraph where it talks about an implementation plan to include timelines and cost estimates, could we add in cultural heritage value?
Heritage value, oh, yes, okay.
All right, so you're making the motion with that addition?
Yes.
Okay, So, is it seconded?
Second.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. My computer just isn't giving me good service here. But anyway, raise your hands if you want to talk about it. Okay, we've got Councillor McNulty, Green, McPhail.
Thank you. First of all, Your Worship, can somebody do something about the volume of some of the councillors? Very, very difficult to hear them.
On that note, you've got to when you're speaking, make sure you're close to your microphones.
Okay. The question, I think this is a great, something that we've had. I asked staff about number 1. Is that not already in the Britannia heritage plan that we did when we did the study of the Britannia site? And we have a timeline of when we were going to address the First Nations bunkhouse?
Yes, it's Marie Fenwick speaking through the chair. We have been working with the Musqueam, looking at the First Nations bunkhouse and the Steveston Heritage Sites Interpretive Plan overall. So those conversations have been happening for quite some time now. So certainly in response to this part of the referral, what I might suggest is that we provide an update through our Steveston Interpretive Plan, regular updates that we are providing to council. I think certainly having more information by November is a very realistic goal. Having a program defined to the level that we'd be able to produce accurate cost estimates by November might be a little bit ambitious, but we can certainly provide an update.
The other question too would be, can we tie it to the cultural harmony initiatives? Even in the plan, I believe there's some referral to it. We did the Britannia shipyards. Harold and I go back 25 years ago on this one, and to bring it forward, but to tie it in with a harmony plan and directions for that. And could we not have an update on that and how we could do that, of what we're doing, how we could do it, and then all the rest that we're talking about with the other groups.
Marie, yes? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Green?
Thank you, and I thank Councillor Au for bringing this forward. I think that we need to demonstrate our commitment with action instead of just word, and so I think that this is a really good point that we would be able to do that with moving forward on these items. In particular, I just wanted to talk about number 2, because that's seeking senior levels of funding, and I know that you regularly scan for funding opportunities. Would this include more of a deeper dive and maybe directly liaising with senior government officials on, for example, heritage or cultural projects like Phoenix Netloff or like the First Nations bunkhouse?
Your Worship, to Councillor Green, staff have it on their work plan to regularly review and to be scanning for different opportunities. And should those arise, they will be connecting with various staff that it may apply to in order to submit a proposal. So currently, right now, for the second motion, it is in progress. Through Vancouver Coastal Health, there's the Plan H grant that staff have applied for with regards to social connectedness. And then there's some anti-racism grants that should be coming available in the fall. And those are for usually nonprofits to apply for. So when that grant application is available, city staff will be connecting with the various organizations and letting them know about that. We'll also continue to look at other possible grants that might be available for us to apply for.
Just to follow up then, is there any expectation that federal government money for capital improvements on cultural and heritage sites will become available in the future if they're not already available? Is that an expectation?
I would need to defer that to John Irving.
Through the chair to Councillor Green, yeah, we have heard that the federal government is expecting to announce additional funding through Build Canada for a variety of projects. Our understanding they might be focused more on COVID mitigation related projects. But certainly we're expecting something. We haven't seen anything to date.
Okay, thank you kindly.
Councillor McPhail? Yeah, you're muted there, Linda.
My computer, I'm having issues with my computer today. I have a question of Councillor Au. In your recommendation number 1, you talk about the restoration. Did you envision any use or programming of the building? Because it may be helpful to get that at this time as well.
Yes, my expectation is that that will be included in the review, so that when staff do the review on the longhouse, they can look at a range of things, including the future possible use of the space.
Yeah, well, to me, that's not clear, so perhaps we need to add that in there. And then I do have a question to staff through you, Your Worship. Has this building been on the capital projects priority list before, or do we know where it is on there?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, and Jim Young, I know, is in the meeting as well if he wants to add on. Britannia, Phoenix, and the Phoenix Net Loft were identified in the last round of the 5 projects for capital priorities.
Because, I mean, we get a priority list every year, and there was, several $1 million that we didn't approve. So for me, I mean, I'm happy to support it now to get an idea of what it may cost. But I think, down the road, I would need to see it in the context of what other projects are being considered. I do have another suggestion. I'm the liaison to the Richmond Intercultural Advisory Committee, and I would hope that this would be referred to them because, the mandate of that committee is to act as a resource to the city on issues relating to intercultural harmony in Richmond, and also to participate in initiatives related to the implementation of the Cultural Harmony Plan in Richmond as appropriate, and I'm sure they would be interested to hear that. So if we could add, refer to REAC somewhere here.
All right, staff, can you take that as direction?
We will. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Liu and then Councillor Steves.
Thank you, Worship. A question to staff. I've been reading your Building on Our Social Future, a Social Development Strategy Progress Report that you gave us 3 weeks ago. And on page 13, it talks about, some of the things you've done engaging our citizens, the Richmond Public Library developing the Indigenous Collaborative Table, the joint planning table with the city, which seeks to build relationships with Indigenous communities. So I'm wondering, does this meet regularly? Like, are these recommendations in front of us different from the stuff that you're already doing? I'm wondering if this is actually going to move the dial, or we're already doing some of these things. And then I see this other item here that you're already working. Cities and city centers community association continue to collaborate with various Indigenous artists and instructors for more Indigenous programming throughout the year. So I see we're doing it. So I'm wondering what this motion will do relative to what we've already got going.
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, yes, we do have some of that work in progress. Again, within the Cultural Harmony Plan, 2 of those actions, motion 2 and motion 3, are short term. While some of the work is being currently done, it will help us to advance the work and to put more focus on that. It is in staff's work plan, so it will just help to emphasize the work that we're doing.
Okay, so my computer is sometimes working to give me a list, but Bill, your hand is still up. And I've got Councillor Steves and Councillor Wolfe. So you can just sorry, Bill. So if you want to speak, although I think we're almost finished this one, if for the future, put your hand up through WebEx. Go ahead. Harold?
Oh, okay, me. Okay. I think it's really important that council make a statement in light of what's happening about Black Folks Matter, and certainly what's been happening with Indigenous rights as well. And we have a unique position in Richmond. In the 1890s, a third of our population was Chinese, and a third of our population actually was First Nations. This is before the Japanese community arrived here. And then for a while, it was about 25% of each, the Japanese, First Nations, and Chinese and Caucasian. And basically, they were all on the Stevenson waterfront, and we've got representative buildings of all of those pioneer people that lived there. I think there's a referral already on the Point House, which has been not quite utilized properly as being used for a caretaker's house. And I think we've got a referral on that one to consider having a First Nations artist in residence there. And if this building was restored, it would certainly make a great art center, which would probably be majorly for First Nations arts. The interesting thing about this is we approved this about 25 years ago. We actually had it in the budget. We for some reason or other, we didn't get around to rebuilding it. At the time we had it, it was estimated to cost $160,000. I think if we put another zero or two on there, it would be about 16 million now. But it was $160,000, and it was carried it over in the budget for 4 years, and then it sort of disappeared. But I think it's important to get on with it. I think it's important to show our support for our First Nations community and show that their major contribution to Richmond before the coming of the Europeans and after, when they were working in the canneries and in the fishery and living in these accommodations.
Okay, Michael?
Questions? One is actually a question that I was going to bring up at the end of the meeting, but it kind of fits here maybe. It was about our advisory committees and if they're actually meeting, because the question was asked about the Intercultural Advisory Committee. I'm not sure if advisory committees are meeting, because some societies and some are not. So I don't know if we can get an update at the end of this meeting, or that could be just a brief discussion at the end.
No, we're going to have that discussion in the context of the next motion or the next resolution. Okay,
perfect. Thank you. My last point here then, just if staff could clarify, it was kind of brought up a little bit, but by approving this, would we be shifting priorities that staff have already been working towards? But like looking through the document of recommended actions for each of the strategic directions, the two that are pointed out here are both short-term goals, but there's other short-term goals. I just don't want what we're doing here today to take away work in progress that's being made right now. So if staff could just confirm that this is not going to be disruptive.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolfe, yes, with council support of this motion, we would review the building and bring back, probably a high-level cost estimate and what an implementation plan would look like. But then typically our process would be to feed that into the annual capital program, where council will consider that project against others and prioritize at that stage.
Okay, terrific. Thank you for that.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else, so I'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Anybody opposed to that? Okay, that's carried. The next item was added live stream of Council School Board Liaison Committee meetings. And as I said to Councillor Wolfe, I think that we have to understand what meetings are going ahead and also what, if anything, we're going to be live streaming. So I'm not just sure who brought this forward. Does anybody want to speak to it?
I can do that.
Okay, now listen, you've got to wave your hands at me. I've given up on looking at raised hands here. My machine has now crashed 4 times. So I'll go with, I've got Councillor Green and I've got Councillor McNulty so far. Go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Liu and I are on the Council School Board Liaison Committee, and we had a discussion about it's an open meeting, but it's not particularly open because people can't come. And so would it make sense to have it available online? And So we would like to have that referred to staff for comment on whether we would be live streaming or not, and yeah, just accessibility of government when things are closed, and what is a necessary accommodation and what isn't.
Now, as I understand, there's not going to be another council school board liaison committee meeting till the fall. Am I correct there? So we got a bit of time on this.
October, yes.
But it does introduce the issue of, I mean, we're doing general purposes committee, we're doing council, we're doing finance committee. What more do we want to live stream? I'm suggesting the answer to that is not the advisory committees, but the standing committees. So that would encompass public works, planning, and what have I missed? Community safety. That's my suggestion, but you can have at it. So consider that in your remarks. Okay, I've got Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just to comment, Your Worship, with regard to this particular group, I used to sit on it as well. But when we work with another group, we need to come up with a process involved of how we're going to work with them on it and what they want to see that's live streamed. And we would need a commitment and a resolution from the school board to say that they're in favor of this as well. I don't have a problem with the staff looking at it and coming forward, but I think we have to have some principles and a process involved, and to see that all members of the committee are quite comfortable with it. Because in this case, is this listed as a standing committee of council?
I don't know. It's not a standing
don't think
committee.
So.
It's
I
not
think
a
it's an
standing
ad hoc
committee
that we established a number of years ago, but I think we could get Tony to investigate it and go back a number of years, because I remember when it did start, and because I was on it in the initial stages. But I think we could, if we wanted to, we could make it that way too. But it is not our committee. It is a joint committee. And I think we need to have a process for those committees, of which we have for our committees. I have no problem with our own committees, but I just don't want to step on anybody's toes.
We would definitely need joint consent from both parties to do it. If the school board didn't want to do it, I'd be surprised, first of all, but you'd have to have their permission. But secondly, it is not a standing committee. The mayor appoints the chairs, vice chairs, and members of standing committees, and there's, I think, 5 of them. And then council elects members as liaisons to various committees. And this one is in the latter category. It's not a standing committee. Having said that, given that there are 2 elected officials from council and from school board, if we want to do standing committees, I think it would be fully justified to do this one as well, but that should be a council decision and school board decision for that matter. Okay,
thank you.
I've got Linda, Carol, just a minute, there was someone else, Michael Wolfe, that's who, and Jack. Okay, Linda?
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with the comments that have been made. I think, if we're going to be looking at streaming anything, it should be our standing committees first. I mean, we have, over a dozen advisory committees, and how do you pick which is more vital than others? And so that would be difficult, I think. So I'll just stop there.
Fair enough. Carol.
Thank you very much. A lot of my assignments with the community liaison, whether it's with a society or whether it's with an advisory committee, are not meeting or are having difficulty meeting. And I'm not saying that we should live stream those. Let's keep them the way they are. But I do think we should direct our IT staff to connect with the chair of each one of those committees and offer technical assistance, because I'm seeing a real unlevel playing field right now between the different assignments that I have, and we can't continue to not meet. We've got to move forward. So is that a friendly direction?
Well, it begs the question of staff, are any of the advisory committees meeting right now? Someone from the staff?
Your Worship, if I can just say that I believe some committees have been meeting on an as required basis, but not a regularly scheduled monthly meeting.
They have been doing that through Zoom?
Through Zoom either or WebEx
or
platforms.
WebEx.
Yes.
Virtually in any case. Okay, so it sounds like it's hit and miss.
Yeah.
If there's something pressing, they meet.
I just think, Mayor Brody, I think it's important that we offer that assistance to them because, I mean, a lot of them, they're just not geared up for setting up a Zoom meeting or setting up a WebEx meeting. And we can't, continue to let things kind of go by the wayside. And it wouldn't cost us much to do that. And I think it would show good direction.
Maybe what staff could do is put it out to the staff liaisons to the various committees to let them know, do they need help? Obviously, some of them have already met and don't need a bit of help. Others probably do. So if we can leave that in staff's hands to deal with it as it comes up, I think that would work. I've got Councillor Wolfe.
Thank you. Just a couple points on this. So I'm not going to speak directly to the school council committee, but the ability for advisory committees to meet really hinges on the staff liaison. And from my experience in these months, some staff liaisons are sending out agendas and booking the WebEx and going ahead with monthly meetings and extraordinary meetings. And then other staff liaison have remained silent, and the members of the committees have been emailing asking for it. So to me, it sounds like there's not a level playing field for staff, because some are doing this at 7 o'clock in an evening and another staff is not. So, and many of these members that aren't meeting are quite frustrated. They thought they were appointed to provide advice on things, and there's not even a venue for that at all. And I also just putting this out there for the clerk's department or whoever, that if some of these haven't met since March, and then they go in the summer break, perhaps the term is going to be extended, or this year won't count to a term limit. I don't know, but that can be for another day's decision. But I am in support of the council liaison meeting going so it can be observed live, because it is hard for people to get in there. And even though the next one is not until October, that could very well be right in the middle of a wave 2 of the COVID. So it's great that we're taking these planning stages now.
Well, taking that point into consideration, what I said before is staff should be mindful of the technical requirements and help out where needed. We should add to that a direction to staff to please, for all the staff liaisons, to contact your committees and make sure that you are staying in touch with them and updating the needs from time to time. So I think that would take that into account. Chuck.
I want to ask a question about the Council School Board Liaison Committee meeting. How often are sensitive issues being discussed during those meetings?
Well, don't forget, there's also a closed portion of it. So if there's sensitive issues, it goes into closed, and you're not going to be live streaming that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else want to weigh in on this? Okay, so my suggestion, again, you can change this or do whatever you want with it, but my suggestion is that staff be directed to review the possibility of live streaming to the City of Richmond's YouTube channel all meetings of standing committees, as well as the Council School Board Liaison Committee, and report back. Would that make sense? Anyone agree with that? You want to make that motion?
That makes sense.
Second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Kelly, go ahead.
I think that that's a good addition because I find the council school board committee is kind of in no man's land because of the function of it compared to an advisory committee. It's almost like a hybrid. So so I think considering them all at the same time, I think is a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, we'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so that's carried. Then we have the food primary entertainment endorsement. Western
Move the
Wall.
recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Carly, do you have anything to add to this?
Nothing to add.
Okay, anyone want to make comments on this? We'll call the question then. All those in favor? Oh, Kelly, did you have a comment?
I wanted a clarification. I didn't have a chance to ask that this is permanent, not temporary, correct?
This
is a permanent change.
Okay, and their primary reason for this is dancing, not karaoke?
Through the chair, that's right. Yep, to host events like grads and weddings. This
Okay,
changed
super.
is they. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Then proposed amendments to traffic bylaw for engine brakes and cyclist crosswalk regulations. Sonali, did you wish to add to your report, or Lloyd B. to talk about it?
No, Your Worship, staff do not have anything to add to the report.
Move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Councillor Wolfe, you had a question?
Thank you. So I have heard quite a bit about this from the Hamilton residents, and I'm a Hamilton resident myself. And actually during this meeting, I've heard the Jake breaks or the Jacob breaks a number of times, just out the crack of the window here. It happens maybe if it wasn't for COVID, I maybe wouldn't have noticed it as much, but it happens throughout the day into the late evenings. It's the same, sometimes it's the same truck. You can see him going down Westminster Highway. And because of the construction at Gilly Road area, there's a speed limit change. And so it's so consistent that trucks are barreling down, and then they realize that they're coming into construction zone, the road's not so smooth, then they all hit the Jake brakes. But it's the same trucks going both ways, and they'll do it. So it's because they're speeding. And so my question to staff is, looking at other municipalities around here, in all of the language, this is on page 42 and GP 42, that table there that you kindly provided. In the language of their bylaw, it all says for emergency, it's okay, but otherwise no. So my first question is, the scenario that I'm talking about, they're coming down from the overpass, or they were on the highway, they're now going to they see cones and the speed is going to be adjusted. Does that warrant them using it for emergency purposes?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Wolfe, that would be up to the driver and the associated company to dispute with enforcement. However, that does not sound like an emergency. It sounds that they are choosing to not wear and tear the manual pedal brakes in lieu of the engine brakes, which the proposed bylaw amendments would address.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And that's why I've been able to see the same trucks doing it. So they know that the speed is changing, but they're still continuing to use it. My next question, well, actually, first a comment. I've asked a number of people who drive their own personal large trucks or for other companies, and they were surprised, very surprised that when I mentioned that Richmond did not have a bylaw. So I'm very thankful for the Transportation Department for bringing this up as quick as they could to bring us in line with much of the rest of Metro Vancouver's bylaws on this. So my next question is, it appears here that staff are looking for a fine amount to place to this. Does staff have a recommended fine amount that we go with?
Yes, through Your Worship, to Councillor Wolfe, staff are recommending a fine of $250.
And can you give some reason behind that, other than it's consistent with the City of Vancouver? Because my thought is that City of Vancouver's got quite a different topography than us. I'm looking at the one for City of Delta. It's more flat. There's a couple overpasses. That's kind of like Richmond, and theirs is 150. So it's less, but I just think maybe that would be more similar, other than City of Vancouver. What was your reasoning other than that?
Wolfe staff scanned the other municipalities, and Delta actually permits the use of engine brakes on non-residential streets. That's why I believe their fine slightly lower. We are proposing a prohibition that's more restrictive on all municipal streets, not to permit the use of engine brakes. So the fine proposed reflects the nature of the bylaw amendments with that higher fine range to deter the use of engine brakes as you described.
Okay, thank you. My final question then is, if people see that terminology you just used about residential roads, but then they go down Westminster Highway or Steveston Highway, do you think they'd be able to make the claim that, hey, we were on a highway, the sign said highway, I'm allowed to use them? So I'm thinking, do we also need to look into the potential renaming of those highways into roads?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolfe, as long as it's a municipal street within the boundaries of City of Richmond, the bylaw amendments would apply.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've got Councillor Green, Councillor Day, Councillor McNulty. Councillor Green.
Thank you. I just had a question of staff on number 1. It wasn't clear, are bikes allowed to cross, or when bikes are crossing on the specially marked crosswalks, are they crossing on the traffic light or are they crossing on the pedestrian signal?
Through your worship to Councillor Green, they are crossing with the pedestrian signal.
Okay, so it still doesn't alleviate what has been identified by other biking groups, that when they're using a multi-use path, it converts them into pedestrian traffic.
Your worship, as long as the light is green at the intersection or the walk signal indicates that the crosswalk can be used accordingly.
But if the traffic light was green and the pedestrian signal was off, they could not.
Through your worship to Councillor Green, in the case of a multi-use path, they would have to enter the intersection because it is a shared pathway facility in the sense that cyclists and pedestrians are sharing the same facility on the near side of the intersection, through the intersection, and on the other end of the intersection. So they would cross like a pedestrian.
That makes it very disappointing for the multi-use pathway users, especially when we don't have alternate bike routes like we do on railway. If people would like to continue on at a green light, they have that option. But in other places where we only have the multi-use path, then they don't have options. Are we looking at separating those facilities so that bikes can use the traffic signals that they're allowed to use?
Sonali, through your worship to Councillor Green, this is Lloyd B here. Just because there's a multi-use path and bikeways, like bicycles are still allowed on the actual road surface by the Motor Vehicle Act. So cyclists that feel comfortable being in that space are certainly welcome to use that space and cross with the green light. But those that are using the multi-use path, will be subject to the rules that Sonali outlined.
So you take your life into your hands, or you are a pedestrian. Thank you.
All right. So I've got Carol, then Bill.
Thank you very much. So just to be clear, we're only talking municipal streets. So this would not in any way be the East-West Connector or Highway 99, correct?
Your worship, that is correct. Only municipal streets.
Okay. Be nice if we could do those as well, but those are jurisdiction outside of our ability. I live near Steveston Highway, and I can tell you, you often hear these engine brakes, and I welcome this bylaw. My only question is, and as Councillor Wolfe pointed out earlier, it's often the same people doing the same behaviors. So on page GP 46, it states that the use of engine brakes on a municipal street, the fine is $250. Is it possible to add to that, that after 3 offenses, that doubles?
Should council direct staff to do so, we can certainly amend the bylaw to reflect that, if that's council's direction to staff.
Yeah, I think we should, because Westchester Highway and Stevenson Highway, a lot of people think they're highways, and you know, we can change people's behavior, but you know, for a lot of them, they're going to just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And so I think that we should have an amendment that after the 3rd offense, the fine for you now doubles.
It might be more feasible to say, direct staff to monitor the situation and see whether we're getting repeat offenders, and then figure out whether we have to up the fines accordingly.
If we go in that direction, can we report back in 12 months?
We can add to this that we'll have a review in 12 months. Bill?
Yeah, thank you. 2 things, Your Worship. I'll be supporting the bylaws, but I just make a couple comments I want to follow back on. On the bicycles, I didn't get clarification here one way or the other. I think we should be consulting Hub and consulting the cycling associations to see what they interpret and would use in terms of crossings. If we go one way that they're motor vehicle and the next way they're pedestrian, we got disaster. So I think we need to clarify that more so for the recreational cyclist, Your Worship, not the cycle clubs that come through 20 or 30 at a time. They know how to traverse the city and follow all the rules and know the rules and know the safety features. So I think I'd like staff to clarify that. And when we do have it clarified, hopefully by Monday, that we put it out as an educational item to Hub and the other cycling associations. On the brakes, Your Worship, it's great to have a rule and bylaw, but who's going to enforce it? Those of us on council, and Harold especially, remember the name John Simchuk, number 6 Road, Jake brakes. And we went, and he would complain at council every Monday night that it would come on because nobody was enforcing it. I think out in Hamilton, I think we should have the RCMP out there with a stoppage, enforcing them, let the truck drivers know, and that they would be ticketed. We need to do some education because we only do things on complaints. Well, who's going to complain? The truck's going to be gone by the time the complaint is coming to our bylaw officers. What I would suggest, Your Worship, I think the fines are fine, and I think increasing it if you're caught more than once, but I think we need to have signage out there. No Jake brakes, applied this as a residential zone, whatever. And I think that has to be coming in there, and we let the Truckers Association know that as well. There are areas in Richmond that we do not allow Jake brakes. And the usage, there's no reason for them to be using them. It's a 30-mile-an-hour zone, or kilometers per hour, or 40. So there's no reason for them to bomb down Westminster Highway. I've been out there as well, and many, many times, and have seen it when they're on a provincial highway or a federal highway. They can go at the appropriate speed. But in the city, we do have speed limits. So I think staff take those items under consideration, please.
So Nellie, can you get some signage out there? It's a fair comment that they've got to be advised as to the situation.
Your Worship, should council endorse the recommendations in the staff reports, staff would implement signage to reinforce the bylaw.
All right, and can you contact Hub and the cycling group before Monday just to get their thoughts on this? On the, yeah. So my suggestion is we would add a number 4, that the matter will be reviewed after 12 months. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, then I'll call the question with that having been added in. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm not seeing anyone opposed. That's carried. Okay, brings us to the Yuan Hang Seaside Developments. You'll remember that this came back to us, I don't know, a month ago or a month and a half ago, we wanted a bunch more information, and so here it is. So before we get into it, Jack, you've got a declaration?
Yes, I have to make a declaration of potential conflict of interest because one of my family members may be a potential buyer of a unit at this site.
All right, so you'll take yourself off video and you can listen, but just don't participate. All right, let's go to, would it be Wayne Craig? Did you want to give us a bit of a summary of this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll pass it over to Suzanne Carter-Huffman, the planner on the file, to give a brief introduction before we take any questions.
Okay, Suzanne?
Great. Okay, the application that's before us today is a proposal by the developer to relocate 10,000 square feet of unbuilt floor area from its phase 1 part of its project into phase 2 and 3. Also to increase the number of units that are permitted on the site from 850 to 941. And to clarify the delivery date of the community center, which will be constructed in the second phase of the project. In May, Council referred the application back to staff for more information. In response to this, it's being clarified that at the time of rezoning, because there had not been detailed design work done for phases 2 and 3, that the estimated number of units were conservative. And as a result, of the detailed work that's being taken care of now, it's confirmed that the total development can accommodate 941 units. The unit sizes are consistent with what we're seeing in other market projects across the downtown area and seem to be generous. The developer has proposed an additional 4 two-bedroom Lemur units to be constructed in phase 2. And the additional open space that the developer will be providing in respect to the capstan station bonus, which is required with regard to the additional units they will have, has been consolidated into 3 locations where it will better enhance the Riverfront Park, the community center plaza, and the general livability of the area. In light of the discussion at general purposes in May, staff have taken back the recommendation that the public hearing will be waived. So public hearing, if the project is endorsed, would go forward as per our normal process. With regard to the community center, the delivery date was always understood to be part of phase 2. Due to the protracted negotiations with MOTI, the design of the phase 2 part of the project had to be delayed, and so it couldn't actually meet the original timelines that were envisioned at rezoning stage. As the community center construction is expected to take 33 months, we anticipate the community center will be completed at the end of 2023. In light of this, the developer proposes to provide for enhanced community center design features, funds to cover the city's costs related to deferring the community center completion to a later date, and also proposes additional funds to cover 50% of city costs related to furniture, fixtures, and equipment. The developer is requesting a partial release of the occupancy hold that currently exists on phase 1. There will be units ready for completion of construction prior to the start of construction on the community center, and the developer would like to see those units be occupied. The rest of the hold that is on phase 1, so for the remainder of the units, and the hold on any residential or commercial uses in phases 2 and 3 would continue to be in effect. The last point was questions about the governance model for the community center, and that will be addressed by a separate report closer to the date of the community center being ready for occupancy. Thank you.
Okay, so let's open it up for some questions. First of all, does someone want to move it at this point? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Carol, I've got your hand up, so I think you want to speak. Yes?
Thank you very much for the report. So I think it's disappointing that the community center is going to be delayed till the end of 2023. There's no way to make that sooner. If we did not allow these changes, would the community center be built sooner?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, no, the community center cannot be delivered any sooner. The timetable put before you is based on the fact that a development permit for phase 2 has not yet been issued, and the construction timeline is approximately 33 months.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is on GP 52, paragraph B. It states that the new revised plan will double the size of the plaza's programmable area. If we don't approve these changes, would we still get double the size of the plaza?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the requirement for the doubling of the plaza is contingent on the increase in the number of units beyond 850.
Okay, so if we want those perks, we have to allow these changes.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, that is correct.
Thank you very much.
Wayne, when do we expect the capstan station to be finished?
Your Worship, current timelines have capstan station anticipated to be completed in mid 2022, post June.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions? Okay, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolfe opposed. That's the only one I've seen. Okay, so that's carried. Phoenix Netloff public consultation process. Marie, do you want to comment on that?
Nothing further to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Comments, questions?
The recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on that? Councillor Wolfe. Councillor Green. Go ahead,
Jim, mind real quick. Just the list of stakeholders, primary stakeholders, it does include the Museum Society, and they've written us a letter that they're happy with that decision. But when I was on the Heritage Commission meeting the other day, I let them know that they actually were not on the primary list. They were on the secondary list. So I'm not sure if staff could comment on why they were not chosen to be on the primary list.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Wolfe, we recommended the organizations that we feel have experience and a background and an interest, particularly in heritage interpretation and tourism. So that was the intention of that initial list. And then in phase 2, there will be an opportunity for the broader stakeholder consultation.
Okay, thank you for that.
I've got Kelly, Linda, Bill. Kelly.
Thank you. I just had a question of staff about on 74, the Indigenous communities that we're going to be consulting. I was just wondering if Musqueam communities are going to be consulted as they were here before any white settlers.
Through the chair to Councillor Green, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Linda.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. Just wondering, in the consultation, which phase would we see youth, the Richmond School District, seniors, and the Richmond Center for Disability? Would that be in phase 2? I mean, I think it's really important we have a youthful voice into what this is going to look like in the future. The museum, our museum now already offers field trips, education kits, children's programs, summer programs. So I think it's really important to have the school district and other associated like families involved in that. And of course, we have a large seniors population. And I think it's our process to always involve the Center for Disability. And so just wondering when would they be involved? Because I think these are really important categories of folks in our community to be involved.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor McPhail. I think, first of all, a lot of there is representation of those groups on some of our existing museum boards. I'll point to the Richmond Museum Society, for example, has a very long history of having a youth representative on their board. At this, through this process, we would be recommending the more formal consultation with those groups as part of phase 2. That certainly doesn't preclude conversations with them throughout the planning phases to ensure accessibility and so on.
Thank you.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, following along that line, I'm not happy with them not being included, the first one. I don't like the, all we're doing is getting those that are jumping on board. I think, first of all, the comment I made, I would like when, for example, the Stevenson Historical Society, I would like to know who is actually speaking for them, and I'd like that name documented. I think too often they say a society is involved, but somebody never takes it to the board of directors. They never have discussion on it. But somebody comes along and says, yeah, I'm in favor of it. It's great. We're in favor of it. But they don't speak for everybody. So I think that is very, very important. And I would like to, I believe when we're doing this, that we bring the mentioned people already, the Musqueam School District and RCD, et cetera, and seniors in the first round. I think it's important because we're saying, well, we really don't need your opinion in the first round, but we'll talk to you in the second round. That's not how we consult. So I would move, your worship, that on page 73.4, the key stakeholders be expanded, and there may also include other people that I may not have been suggested at this time.
Just before I take that motion, Marie, is you want to include those groups? Is that the way to include them in that first round? Is there a reason not to?
Through your worship, we can certainly look at including them in the first round if that's the direction of council. I think part of the rationale for this recommendation is we know that there's going to be a lot of interest in this facilities, a lot of viewpoints that can potentially be represented, and working with groups that have already had a history of being involved in the work of museum planning and education locally, we thought would be a good place to start. We can certainly have a look at including some of the other groups and including them in the first phase. It will add a little bit of time, likely, to that first phase of the process, but it's certainly something that could be accommodated in the first phase.
It will give us a balanced report back, your worship, and give us a blend so we know where we're going to go from here. From once we see the consultation, we may change direction. We may go a different path, and that we may see something in our mind that we want to add that isn't there. So I think it makes them in a sense. And I also suggest the Stevenson Community Society.
Maybe I could go back to Linda McPhail. Councillor McPhail, do you want to give us that list? That you had about 3 or 4 groups. We would add Stevenson Community Society.
The Richmond School District.
Richmond School District, yeah.
I had seniors, so I don't know if that's the senior society or just seniors that representative of the community, and the Richmond Center for Disability and youth. I think it's really important to have youth. And they don't necessarily have to be youth who are in school, per se.
Okay, well, for the seniors, it could be the Seniors Advisory Committee.
Sure.
We can just leave it at youth because I don't know what exact group that would be. So,
sorry, for youth, do we have any youth that have signed up for the program we had to cancel, the municipal education program? Civic.
Well, hold it a second here. We're trying to get an amendment on the floor. So Linda or Bill, do you want to move a motion that
I want to add Musqueam as well. We need a representative from the Musqueam. This is their territory. This was where their midness were. So I think Mr. Point or somebody of that nature could be well give us some good information as well. So I would be that.
So you're adding to add to this that staff add to the consultation list Stevenson Community Society, the Richmond School District, Senior Advisory Committee, the Musqueam First Nation, the Richmond Committee on Disability, and a youth group.
Thank you. So moved.
Okay. So that's moved and second. That's the amendment. Now, Kelly, you mentioned in terms of the youth, I take it that in terms of identifying a group, maybe we could all cast our minds to that. That may be the group that, if we're having that program that we envisioned starting back in April and it was put off, that may be the group, or it may be another group. So maybe we could all just give our ideas to staff directly as to how we can include the youth. Okay, so are you on the amendment? Carol, are you on the amendment? You're muted.
There's one other thing. I mean, given that we're doing all this public consultation, is it possible to also add to the amendment that staff give regular updates to the provincial and federal government with
No.
But
that is not what we're talking about. We can add direction later. We're adding consultation of these specific groups. And I'm going to call on the amendment. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? So that is carried. We will add those people to the list. Now, so we're back on the main motion. Carol, you wanted to talk about going to the feds or something?
Yeah, I think that as we go through this consultation process, it's an excellent opportunity to inform the provincial and federal governments of where we're going with this project, and kind of it's a bit of a fishing expedition to see if we can get some funding for this project. So rather than just do it all on our own in our own little silo, I think that including them in the information part of it would be a great way to potentially see if there's funding opportunities.
Well, staff is always looking for funding opportunities, so nothing is changing there. My suggestion is we're talking about consultation, and so that strictly isn't part, in my mind, of consultation. So let's call the question on the motion. Yeah, Harold?
Whoa.
What?
I have my hand up.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just very briefly, I sent everybody a copy of some of the background information, and one of them was the report to council from November the 6th, 1989. And at the last meeting, I said that Councillor Percival Smith, when we took the museum out of the Arts Centre project, said, well, that'll be the next item on the agenda. The first thing we build will be a museum. Well, that was, I dug up the minutes, and basically we took the museum out of the Arts Centre, Cultural Centre complex 30 years and about 5 or 6 months ago. So it's been a long, long wait. And I think it's important that we emphasize in these discussions, we're looking at a museum. Some people will want a destination museum, and that I think we looked at in 2007, which is another report I gave you, where we approved a destination museum. We've never been able to financially put forward the 50 or 55 or 60 million dollars to build a destination museum. So this is our next best bet, and it kills two birds with one stone. So I think that's what we have to talk about with the consultation. We're looking at a heritage site, a heritage building, when we get to save the land, and basically we do 2 or 3 things at the same time, and we finally get a museum after 30 years. But I would hope we're not going to get an argument about whether we're having a destination museum or not. I think that debate's over.
In terms of an answer to that, or a response to that, I believe that there will be a very lively debate as to whether this is the appropriate place for a museum, especially when it costs $34 million. So we can cross that bridge when we come to it. So all those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried. That brings us to the Phoenix Netloft deconstruction and salvage.
The recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Staff, is there anything you want to add to the report?
No, I have no information to add to the report, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Anybody want to speak to that, Bill?
Yeah, just from staff, it would be nice to get periodic updates of what you're able to save, what you're not able to save, and just let us know how things are going. I'm sure you're not going to be able to save everything, and so we kind of know what to expect in terms of building a new building here.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, we can give periodic updates.
Thank you.
Let's see, I've got Harold and Carol. Carol, your hand is still up on the machine, by the way. So, Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure who my question is to. I sent an email to Marie. There was something that came out last week, and I got it as an email from the federal government that they're considering as part of the infrastructure for COVID-19 that they would have money available for heritage projects if they're shovel ready. And I'm just wondering if anybody's got to check that out, and if this would basically dismantling the building would qualify as a shovel ready project. It seems to me it should if the federal government approves that program. So does anybody know about that? Because it has been proposed.
Through the chair to Councillor Steves, staff are actually in the process right now of identifying potential shovel-ready projects that could be submitted for potential funding. As you noted, there has not been an announcement at this point in time, and so staff are trying to position ourselves that we could be ready with a list of projects that could potentially include the deconstruction and salvage of the Phoenix Net Loft.
Some of they were actually looking at having a category of shovel-ready heritage, so hopefully this would be okay for it. Thanks.
All right, so I've got Councillor Day, Councillor McPhail, Councillor Green. Carol, we're not hearing you.
Sorry. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about, is that many years ago, there was no money for the South Arm Community Center. And in just a casual conversation with at that point MP Joe Pescalito, he actually said, do you know of any shovel-ready projects? And, you know, it wasn't out there and nobody knew about it. And he immediately got us a third funding. So a third came from the community center, a third from the city, and a third from the feds. So I really think this is an opportunity, because before the money dries up, which it probably will when we have to get further down the COVID-19 roll, we should really be aggressively lobbying our MPs, our MLAs, and get them doing some groundwork for us, because I think there is money out there, and now's the time to do it, because the trades will be cheaper when there's less work. Thank you.
All right, Linda.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a question through you to staff. On GP 78, under the deconstruction and salvage, and I think option 1 is the best route to go, so I am supportive of that. It talks about salvaging. Will we be able to salvage and store everything on site, or will we have to move it somewhere? Do we know that?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, with our staff's intention is at this time is to store the salvage materials at 7400 River Road. If the council may recall that Phoenix Net Loft used to store a number of artifacts, and those artifacts have all since been moved to 7400 River Road. And so we think that would be an appropriate place to store the artifacts or the salvage material until it's ready for reuse.
So just to follow up, the cost for moving all those items then, that's included in the price here?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, yes, it is included in the price.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Green.
Thank you. Just a question to staff about pedestrian access in that area, because we have a lot of traffic from Gary Point to London Landing in that area, and just wondering how that was going to be set up.
Through the chair to Councillor Green, once we've selected a contractor to do the deconstruction salvage, we'll have to come up with a site logistics plan. So we don't have that plan at this time, but what we envision is that the parking lot area right now will be the work area, the staging area for the contractor, that we will have to reroute pedestrian traffic around the outside, the perimeter of that parking lot.
Okay, and then I'm presuming that you're going to be talking to special event staff, because there's going to be some maritime festival activities. So we'll be keeping that in mind.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Green. Yeah, so we've actually already had some preliminary discussions, and at this point in time, at a high level, it looks like the schedules are more or less work together. That the Maritime Festival should be able to take place followed immediately thereafter by the contractor mobilizing to site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that about does it for discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, so the last item on the GP list is the potential temporary road changes in Steveston Village. Lloyd, did you want to add anything to your report?
Mr. Mayor, I have nothing to add at this time, but I'm here to answer your questions.
Okay, I've got on the speakers list, I got Linda. Oh God. I say, oh God, because my machine doesn't want to move. Okay, so that's all I've got at this point, but go ahead, Linda.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm really disappointed in the results of the survey. I've personally spoken to several businesses in Steveston who are really looking forward to it. I know I did also hear some concerns about pedestrian access to stores and parking. And, you know, especially since when you read the letter from Dr. Duar that we received about how they highly recommend, you know, making the proposed streets completely car-free, how that's such a great idea. And I'm just through you to staff, is there any update on the pilot program on Bayview? I've had a couple people comment that they find it very disjointed, that there's cyclists on the sidewalk, in the lane, on the road, and when it's busy, like it has been the last couple of weekends in Steveston, it's actually very dangerous being a vehicle because it's hard to maneuver on Bayview itself.
Through your worship to Councillor McPhail, we haven't, to be honest, we've actually found that the trial piece on Bayview to be fairly well received. We haven't received very many complaints at all. And we do send staff out to observe what's going on down there quite regularly, including on the weekends. And we haven't observed anything, you know, terrible, but we can keep our eyes out and see if it requires a little bit more organization.
Thank you.
Okay, someone want to move the motion?
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion on it? I've got Councillor Day and Councillor Steves.
I'm really disappointed in the graphs showing so much opposition to this. I'm really surprised. I thought we were doing a really positive thing for the community and for the business owners. So I am surprised. But I guess what I'm wondering is if we made a plan to allow for extra parking so there was no net loss of parking spots, and if in particular there was parking at one end or the other of Moncton for disabled people and for seniors, maybe that's something we could arrange with the Season Harbor Authority. Maybe this would be better received. So any ideas?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, I guess one of the things that we noted from a lot of the businesses there is that they're not so much worried about the total parking, because there is a lot of parking in Steveston. There's like 1,111 parking spots, about half of which are pay parking, but the other half are free. What we noticed was, while some of the businesses really liked the idea, some really didn't want to lose the parking in front of their business because they didn't see a benefit in them losing that parking, and they really felt that that would impact their customers. And so I think that the result really shows us that there's a wide variety of businesses within Steveston, and they all have different needs.
Harold?
Yeah, I just had a suggestion. I really like the motion. I suggested it for discussion, but has staff considered that we would make Moncton Street a one-way street? The only reason driving a car in either Moncton Street or Bayview is to find a parking spot. And you go round and round and round and round looking for that one opening. So, and then you end up parking down on First Avenue or someplace south of Chatham. But people drive around looking for that spot. And it seems to me there's no reason to have two-way traffic on any of the streets other than Chatham Street. Chatham Street serves the residential community and goes all the way to 7th Avenue, but Moncton doesn't. So has staff considered that make the streets one way, which would at least allow us to, widen out the strip beyond the sidewalks, either on one side of the street or both, and still allow a fair amount of parking.
Through your worship to Councillor Steves, absolutely that could solve some of those problems. And it was suggested by a few of the people on Moncton Street that we consider looking at Moncton Street as one way, and that is a possibility. But we did also have other businesses in the area that they didn't like the one-way ideas, even on Bayview and such, just because they felt that their customers would have to take the long route to get to where they are. But we can definitely have another look at something like making a one-way on Moncton and preserving all the parking on it.
My preference would be to monitor the situation we have now with the whatever patios are out there, and refer it back to take a look at having a system of one-way streets as a referral.
Well, Lloyd, that's going to be among the things you're watching, right?
Yeah, Your Worship, absolutely. Like, staff is monitoring the pedestrian and cyclist traffic down in Steveston, and looking to see if we do need more space. As we mentioned in our report, if we do see a need, we will bring forward further recommendations for council's consideration.
Okay, Councillor Green, then Councillor Al. Kelly?
Thank you. I'm also disappointed by the results of the survey. The feedback that I've seen online on a variety of forums, not just my own page, so it's just not my own people telling me the same thing, it's the general public. We're really, really supportive of this and really excited to be able to spend time safely in Steveston, and time safely in Steveston equals people spending more time buying things. So it seemed like a real no-brainer, especially when all the research backs up that is, in fact, what ends up happening. And it was consistent with the NATCO recommendations for pandemic recovery. So, this is a professional body that's saying that this is the recommendation that we would do. But the thing that did come up consistently was a concern about accessible parking. And when I think about Steveston, I can't think of very many street spots. I can only think of 2 that are designated as accessible parking in Steveston. So I would like to have a referral to re-examine our parking in Steveston for accessible parking. Maybe we need to look at putting in more spots near intersections. For example, First Ave and Moncton, so that people are closer to the shop fronts that they'd like to go visit, rather than endlessly circling for a parking spot. If we're talking about having this come, on the back burner and potentially coming forward again in response to citizens' needs, can we talk about it differently? Because what we're doing is we're framing it as this is a street closure, but what we should be talking about is this is a revitalization plan for businesses. This is a temporary public plaza for people to connect and people to be able to be safe, and maybe more of a multidisciplinary approach is needed, where we're bringing in other departments like the Economic Development Office and Parks and Public Works to talk about how this would come together, because it is very sensible, eminently sensible, and I'm not very I'm disappointed anyway. But I would like to make that referral on accessible parking.
Well, don't forget, what we're dealing with here are temporary measures. Yeah. What you're talking about, I think, are permanent measures. No. That, if I may finish, that is a very different situation. We have had numerous traffic, parking, and other studies over a period of time. what we're dealing with here, I mean, you can make whatever referral motion you want, but this motion is about temporary measures.
Yes. I'm
All right,
fully aware of
check.
it being temporary.
Check.
Your Worship, I really like the idea of Councillor Steves on mountain, and probably instead of just asking staff to monitor the situation, I would really like that staff would make a recommendation on a pilot project to close Mountain Street for, say, for example, 6 weeks from mid-July to end of August as a pilot project to see how well we work. Because I think right now some of the merchants in the area is hesitant. But if we can have a small scale pilot projects on mountains, that might alleviate some of those concerns. So I would like to suggest that staff come up with a report on a pilot project on mountain from mid-July to August for a closure, and maybe even on weekends, no Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So just a small scale experiment. And in fact, in Hong Kong, that's very common. It's very common. People some of this have been closed for Saturdays and Sundays. So I would make that motion.
Well, you have to vote on this one first, because my suggestion is that what you're suggesting is contrary to this motion says do nothing, continue to review it. You're saying have a pilot project, do something. And so if you don't like what's on the floor, then we can entertain that kind of a motion. On the substance of it, I would observe that what you're doing, if the idea that staff has gone out to the merchants to talk to them, the idea is to get them back up and running as soon as possible. And so I would really question the idea of a pilot project, at least at this time, because what you're doing at that point is you're saying to the merchants, we don't agree with you, and we're going to do what we think is best. And and I'm not sure that that's the way to go. But in any case, if this motion is not supported, then make whatever motion you want. So I'm going to call the question on the motion. Oh, yes, Michael. What? Yes, Michael.
For that, I put my hand up late there. Just a question to staff, and then maybe a very brief comment. So looking at the two pie charts, to me, if I take the two categories at the top or the two at the bottom, clearly the Moncton Street closure has opposition, and that's really not a go at this time. But looking at the other one, looking at the Bayview Street, I kind of feel that when people would have done the survey, after looking first at a closure and then being, oh, another closure, I'm not sure if staff had any feeling that it might have been interpreted as another closure of Bayview Street. Looking in the comments, I didn't see that, but I also didn't really see much direct comment on the conversion and having that laneway. Does staff have any other indication on if there was perhaps some confusion? Because even regardless, if you take the top two support categories, that's over 50%. So I'm still very supportive of the temporary conversion.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Wolfe, absolutely, there was far more support for a partial closure of Bayview and the one-way system than for Moncton. I believe that there was any confusion. Staff had a lot of discussion with all of the people that were involved in participating in this survey, and we did have an online open house basically to have this discussion. And in none of those did I observe anyone have any confusion about what the options were. Like they all understood that Bayview was one way with just a partial closure.
Okay, thanks. Then just two quick side ones. If that I can't remember the name of it, that like large bike where a whole bunch of people are on it, if there were the conversion, would that would be on the street, not in the temporary on-street pathway, right? That large. Its name.
Through your worship to Councillor Wolfe, absolutely. The quadricycle is the word you're looking for. It goes on the roadway. It doesn't go on the bike paths or the walking surfaces. It's kind of as big as a car. It really wouldn't work.
And then was there any discussion on when you were doing, communicating with people that they were opposed to having the temporary on-street pathway because it would block access to one of the parking lots or one of the, because here when you look at the map, it just shows it's a solid green line, doesn't show that there's actually opportunity for vehicles that are going one way to still cross it to get into the other area. Do you have an idea of like how many reaches would there be to allow that one-way traffic to cross it to get in? I'm looking on Google Earth street map and see a handful of potential.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Wolfe, staff was very clear to everyone that participated that all access to all the surface parking, etc., was still going to be available. That would be worked into the plan, and we did have one request from that's parked at the end of number 1 road, asking that question directly. That didn't actually participate in the survey, and we responded to them this morning saying that absolutely the plan, if it's implemented, would maintain access.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Carol, you had another comment?
Yeah, I did.
Go ahead.
Okay, what I'm concerned about is the motion itself doesn't make sense to me, because while we did not have support for closure of Moncton, we did have strong support, or fairly strong support, 60% for a one-way system for Bayview. So why are we throwing both ideas out? Why don't we say, okay, we won't close Moncton, but let's do Bayview one way. That way we're responding to the people that have indicated what they like.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, on the surface there is stronger support, but it's still only 60%. It's not like 80% support. And one of our challenges that we noted was of the businesses that are actually on Bayview, 60% of them opposed doing the partial closure of Bayview. So given that we didn't have a really strong result in the overall support, had quite a negative result from the businesses that would actually directly be impacted. That was the recommendation that we put forward.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to call the question on the motion as it stands. All those in favor? Those opposed? Sorry, I see Harold and Jack are opposed. So, okay, so that is carried. All right, I think that one does that then. Someone move adjournment?
So moved.
For accessible parking.
I'm sorry?
Referral for accessible parking?
May I suggest that you meet with staff and find out what the history is to this point of parking and traffic studies. They are extensive, and then you can figure out what motion you want to make on that. You can do it next week at council if that's your pleasure.
Can I just jump in here for a moment?
Who is that? Yes.
Alexa. I sit on Richmond Center for Disability. They're having their meeting. Richmond Center for Disability, I sit on their board.
Yeah.
They're having their meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
They have a parking committee on the board. And so I can run it past them if they've come up with any issues or if they have some recommendations on this, because they have a specific subcommittee on their board that deals with parking issues specifically. So if they have any requests or referrals for this too, maybe they want to be, they would like to be apprised of it, or if they don't, if they have never had an issue with it, then you can hear from them too.
Are you talking about it as part of the motion we just passed?
No, I'm just suggesting that before we do a whole process to decide if we need more, we can talk to our group that deals with people who get all the parking passes, and they're sort of the conduit for anybody that has an issue. They're the first to hear about it, and they have specifically already a parking.
Well, if you've got input on the parking situation, by all means, bring it in, either directly or through staff.
Move adjournment.
Okay, so we're now adjourned, and we'll go to the council meeting. Hang on a second. Okay, so on the council meeting, I'll reconvene this. My suggestion, just going over to number 3, which was the potential road changes in Stevenson Village, because there was at least a couple of councillors who were looking into possibilities as to what may be added to that or how it might be affected. Why don't we just leave that off the agenda, and we'll just simply do that next week at the regular council meeting. Does that work?
Yeah. Move it comes off.
Yeah, I don't think we need to be formal about it. We'll just not deal with it and direct staff that it'll come back next Monday. No. All right, so the first item is the consent resolutions of the city for the Richmond Olympic Oval Corporation. You've got them there. You've got the, they talk about the financial statements, the appointment of directors, etc. I know that we've got the chair of the Oval Board on the line. Does someone want to move this motion?
Move recommendation.
Moved and seconded. I'll ask staff or Mr. Skulski if you have any input into this.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's Dennis Skulski. No, it's pretty straightforward. Everything that's there. We're going through obviously everything else that's going on with the COVID right now, but the staff and the management have done a very good job preparing a plan, and we're ready to move forward as soon as we get the appropriate green lights from the provincial government and the health ministry, and of course the support of council.
All right, thank you. Councillor Day.
Wondering what the term limits are for these appointments, because most of the committees that we have all have limit of how many terms they can serve. Is this the same for them?
Either Mr. Skulski or George Duncan, are there term limits?
Mr. Chairman, the city has as a policy term limits, but my recollection, and I'll have to have clerks confirm, I don't think that it applies to the Oval based on the type of governance situation that we have, but we will check on that just to make sure that that is the case.
Because like we agreed on all the other committees, we wanted to have fresh blood come in, and I've noticed a lot of the same names, and I'm sure they're doing a fabulous job, but you know, we also want to open it up for opportunities for other people. So will you know more by next Monday?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm sure I can find out probably later this evening or tomorrow. I should mention though that
this is not on Monday.
The term limits were established, like for example, when we appoint to a board like an external board, the airport authority. So with the Oval, and as will be the case with Lulu Island shortly, we'll be coming to council to say it's time to look at a new makeup of a board, because right now Lulu Island is, governance model has all staff members on the board, and I feel the business has evolved to a point where it's just too significant, too busy, and dealing with important matters for staff to be the makeup of the board. Well, when we recruit, we'll also be looking to have continuity. So It's not like our advisory committees where you're going to want to change people every 2 years. The amount of expertise these people acquire, they become an asset. So I'm pretty certain that the term limits don't apply. We will confirm that.
Yeah, and I'm just going to remind you that we're not going, this doesn't go to next Monday. This is a council meeting right now. And so the first 7 is just to advise us, remind us who's there. And then we're making other appointments on top of that. Bill.
I just wanted people, council members to be aware that we are in council now. And this is a council meeting, so there's no information coming later. Well, it can be later, but the decisions are made today.
Yeah, right. Anyone else? All right, we've got the motion on the floor. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? So that is carried. Thank you, Dennis Skolsky. Thanks for being here. Consent resolutions of the shareholder of Lulu Island Energy Company. Someone want to move that?
Recommendation.
So moved and seconded. Any staff comments on this one?
Nothing further to add, Your Worship.
All right, Councillor Day.
On this one, I also wondered about the term limits, and the reason being, I'm thinking of succession planning. Like, it would be nice if we had, people coming up the ranks also have an opportunity to serve on this. And then my second question is, will there ever be like a governing committee for all our energy corporations?
Your Worship, to Councillor Day, as the CEO has referenced previously that there's a study undergoing right now and reviewing the governance of the Lulu Island Energy Corp. So that'll be taken into consideration also.
Okay, so, and with regards to the succession planning, so other staff members coming up the ranks can potentially take one of these chairs, one of these seats.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I just add to that to Mr. Chong's response. Yeah, about half the staff members that we have proposed for the board are new to the board. We have one member who's actually new. That would be Tony Cappuccinello. And then probably half of the other members were introduced to the board in the previous 2 years. So we do have a fair amount of fresh blood there, but certainly, as the CAO indicated, we are undergoing an exercise now for reconstituting the governance and bringing in external members to the board.
All right, thank you so much.
Through your worship, if I may, to Councillor Day's question regarding term limits, there are no term limits in place.
Okay.
And so that would be for the Oval and the Lulu Island Energy?
That is my understanding, your worship.
All righty. Any other comments, questions? Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? I'm not seeing any. That's carried. And as I say, the temporary road changes in Stevenson, we'll put that off to next Monday. And someone move adjournment.
Just, okay, Mayor Brody.
Yes. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to look at term limits for both of the Full and the Lulu Island Energy Corporations.
Is that seconded?
Second.
I want to say how unwise I think that idea is. On both of these corporations, we have to have the highest expertise that we can find. And I can tell you that there is no higher functioning board, in my opinion, in the entire city operation than the Oval Board. And the success that they have shown over the last 10 years bears that out. Secondly, for Lulu Island, these are senior staff members and senior people with real expertise that are appointed to that board. I'm not in favor of term limits for either group. Other comments? Okay, well, yes, Kelly.
should be term limits because it does allow for fresh blood, and there are lots of very high functioning, very capable people in the city that would be able to do the work that is required on the Oval. And we never know how good we can be until we can change things up. So we will stagnate though if we never change. I would suggest a term limit of 6 to 8 years would be appropriate to allow for continuity in between changing.
All right. I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. And those opposed? I'm having a problem with my pictures here. So, Councillor McNulty, are you for this or against it? You got to unmute yourself, please.
In the negative.
Okay, so I've got you in the negative. Councillor Steves, you're in the negative. Councillor McPhail.
Negative.
Councillor Liu.
Correct. Against.
And I'm sorry?
Yes, I'm against.
Okay, and I am also against. So that is defeated. All right, so someone move adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, we're now adjourned. And just, you got to give us a couple minutes because we got to get prepared